It's Christmas time again, the season of comfort and joy. A time to stop all the hustle and bustle and enjoy the blessings of family and friends. Outside, the city is filled with magic. Inside, the house is transformed into an enchanted hideaway. Holly and evergreen adorn the mantelpiece, and mistletoe hangs patiently over the door. The tree, with all its trimmings, is a vision of magical light, and the crackling fire casts flickering shadows over the pile of presents underneath. We'll hang the stockings on the chimney with care so Santa Claus can fill them with goodies, and then we'll celebrate the birth of baby Jesus. But have you ever wondered just what exactly Santa Claus has to do with Jesus? Or why we bring trees inside the house and decorate them with lights? And deck the halls with boughs of holly? Come to think of it, I don't remember Mary and Joseph ever kissing under the mistletoe. Yes, it's a bit of a mystery, all right. That's because people were celebrating Christmas thousands of years before Christ was even born. Santa Claus, and almost all the things we do at Christmas, were all part of ancient pagan rituals which celebrated not the birth of baby Jesus, but the birth of the new year. Happy New Year! Rituals which sent gods to the underworld to battle the powers of darkness and chaos, encouraged fertility and human sacrifice, as well as peace on earth and goodwill towards men. How can I explain? Imagine the power goes off and the furnace cuts out. That's all right, you've got a fireplace. And when you have fire, you have heat and light. And what, besides food, could be more important, especially in the darkest, coldest part of the year? You stare into the fire, just like the people of Mesopotamia did 4,000 years ago. Then, people couldn't help but notice a mysterious connection between the sun and life itself. In summer, the sun was hot, the earth was green, and food was plentiful. But as summer turned to fall, the sun's strength gradually ebbed away as though some evil power was sapping away its very life force. The air turned cold. The leaves shriveled and fell from the trees, until finally it seemed that if something wasn't done soon, the powers of darkness and death would destroy the sun completely, and the earth would become a dark, cold, and lifeless place. In the beginning, Marduk, chief of the gods, had defeated the spirit of chaos and darkness and created the world. But each year, the darkness regained strength. And each year, Marduk returned to the underworld and fought a terrible battle to save the sun. On Earth, everyone waited and worried. Maybe this time, Marduk would fail. The people built enormous bonfires, dispelling the darkness, and spreading enough light to inspire the sun itself. They made images of Marduk's evil foe, threw them into the fire, and watched the flames turn them to ashes. The king himself was supposed to accompany Marduk and battle by his side, but to do so, he would have to die, while a new king took his place on Earth, so he ordered a criminal to temporarily take his place. Dressed in the king's royal robes, he was given everything his heart desired. Oh, it was great while it lasted, but when the festival was over, he was promptly sacrificed. You see, in those days, it was believed that blood contained the very essence of life and fertility, and when given as a gift to a god or to the earth, it would magically fertilize the soil it fell on. And since famine was a constant threat, fertile soil and healthy crops could mean the difference between life and death for the entire community. When the priests announced that Marduk had won, everyone began to celebrate. The bright lights, the exchanging of gifts, the merrymaking and clowning, the carol singing and feasting we partake of at Christmas today were all part of this great New Year's celebration. The ideas and customs of the great civilizations of Mesopotamia spread throughout Europe, influencing the celebrations of every culture they touched. But it took the Romans to finally meld the many pagan winter festivals into one great lusty celebration called Saturnalia. In the Roman New Year's festivals of Saturnalia and the Calendae, Saturn replaced the Mesopotamian god Marduk as host of the ceremonies, but the rituals were much the same. The idea of reliving a golden age in the distant past set the mood for the festival. The days when Saturn, a just and kindly monarch, ruled, when everyone was equal and everyone was happy. It was a time of goodwill toward all. Schools were closed, no battles could be fought, and no one could be punished. As the poet Lucan explained it,
all business, be it public or private, is forbidden during the feast days, save such as tends to sport and solace and delight. Let none follow their avocations, saving cooks and bakers. All men shall be equal, slaves and free, rich and poor, one with another. Anger, resentment, threats are contrary to the law. No discourse shall be either composed or delivered, except it be witty and lusty, conducing to mirth and jollity.
Masters and slaves ate together, exchanged places, and all rules were turned inside out. The slaves chose one of their members to be king of the household festival. His word was law, and he commanded the guests to perform every outrageous act that came to mind.
One must shout out a libel on himself, another dance naked, or pick up the flute girl and carry her thrice around the house.
In Rome, these mock kings weren't sacrificed at the end of the feast, but in the Balkans, when Saturnalia arrived, the soldiers used a lottery method so the gods themselves chose which of them would be the king. For a whole month, the chosen one was given every indulgence. But when his 30 days were up, he had to stand at the altar and kill himself. Little dolls were given away as presents, especially to children. Sad to say, this custom was probably a remnant of human sacrifice too. For Saturn was an ancient agricultural god who ate his own children, and his Carthaginian counterpart was the god Baal, whose horned figure contained a furnace into which children were sacrificially fed. Fortunately, over the years, the custom changed from children being given as gifts to children being the ones to receive gifts. The day after the festival of Saturnalia was December 25th, when the Romans calculated the sun to be at its lowest ebb, ready to increase again. Later, it became known as Juvenalia, the Feast of the Children. A few days later, the Kalends began, a festival concerned with the date of the new year and the two-faced deity Janus, with one face looking back on the past and the other forward to the future. On January 1st, New Year's Day, people masqueraded through the streets, feasted, visited friends, and gave each other good luck gifts. Originally, they were candles and lucky fruits. Later, they were lucky cakes and other tokens of well-wishing. Halls were decked with boughs of laurel, and evergreens were decorated with candles to fend off the spirits of darkness. This is how Libanius, the Greek sophist of the 4th century, described the celebration.
The festival of Kalends is celebrated everywhere as far as the limits of the Roman Empire extend. Everywhere may be seen carousels and well-laden tables. Luxurious abundance is found in the houses of the rich, but also in the houses of the poor. Better food than usual is put upon the tables. The impulse to spend seizes everyone. He who the whole year through has taken pleasure in saving and piling up his pence becomes suddenly extravagant. People are not only generous to themselves, but also towards their fellow men. A stream of presents pours out on all sides. The Kalends festival banishes all that is connected with toil and allows men to give themselves up to undisturbed enjoyment. On the eve of the new year, few people go to bed. Most go about the streets with singing and leaping and all sorts of mockery.
Now that sounds a lot like Christmas today, doesn't it? But why all the extravagance and generosity? Well, it was rather like buying insurance for a good and prosperous year ahead. It was the idea that all's well that ends well turned backward. In the beginning of the year, people acted out how they wanted the rest of the year to be. Giving ensured wealth, and eating and drinking excessively assured lots of food and drink. But the strangest Kalen's custom of all was one which horrified the early Christian church.
On those days, the heathen dressed themselves up in indecent deformities. These miserable men put on counterfeit forms and monstrous faces at which one should rather be ashamed and sad. Some are clothed in the hides of cattle, others put on the heads of beasts, rejoicing and exulting that they have so transformed themselves into the shapes of animals that they no longer appear to be men. How vile, further, it is that those who have been born men are clothed in women's dresses. They have bearded faces, and yet they wish to appear women.
Actually, the custom of masquerading in the hides of animals, women's clothing, and outrageous masks was originally celebrated in Greece, Gaul, Germany, and Great Britain long before the Romans arrived. Rituals whose ancient origins carry us back to a dimly remembered past belonging to mystical druids, Viking heroes, and the mysterious horned god. For the most part, the pagan midwinter festivals were a time of joy and celebration, a release from everyday duties and social restrictions. All that could be done to prepare for winter had been done. The granaries were full, the animals slaughtered, so the time was ripe for feasting. Since there was little work to be done until spring, these feasts often lasted for days and were full of joyous, lusty carousing, with much eating, drinking, lovemaking, and scaring away of evil spirits. Yes, evil spirits, for winter was the time when death and darkness ruled the earth and attracted ghosts and otherworld spirits to roam among the living. In the dead of winter, the evergreen symbolized the permanence of the life force. Its green, death-defying leaves suggested strange powers, as if they contained the sun within themselves, and of all the evergreens. Holly and ivy and mistletoe, which all bear fruit only in the winter, were seen as a triumph of fertility over the forces of darkness and death. For as long as is known, these plants were brought into the house to protect the home from the evil spirits so abundant during the dark time of the year, and to attract fruitfulness in the year to come. Evergreen trees, which didn't bear fruit, were decorated with gilded nuts and apples. Mistletoe was especially revered by the Celtic priest class, known as the Druids. They called it the All-Healer, and not only did it increase the productivity of the soil and fertility of cattle, it also cured impotence, and sprigs fixed above doorways kept away lightning and many kinds of evil. Since mistletoe has no roots in the ground, it was believed to come from heaven itself, and that's what gave it such wondrous powers. If the mistletoe grew on the sacred oak, it was especially powerful. To the Greeks and the Celtic Druids, the oak was the holy tree which, when struck by lightning, transported the gift of fire from the sun god to the earth. On the 6th day of the moon, clad in white robes, the archdruid would cut down the mistletoe with golden sickles and catch it in a white cloth, so it would be untouched by human hand. Afterward, 2 white bulls were sacrificed. Mistletoe was also sacred to the Greeks and Romans, who thought it was created when lightning struck a tree and represented sexual energy. The Germanic tribes believed that all who passed under the mistletoe were kissed by Freya, the goddess of fertility, and were blessed with sexual power. Today, kissing under the mistletoe is only an excuse to steal an innocent kiss, but it began as part of the fertility